Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and this is episode 50. And I've got Cameron with me here. Thanks for being here on this really cool milestone, Cameron.
Hi, Jana. I'm so glad to be here. I'm actually kind of honored that you asked me to be on your 50th show.
It just felt like the right thing to do. You know what I mean? it was just the right thing to do. I'm telling you.
Okay.
And you were the one that came up with the discussion anyway, right? Or the idea.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you had the brilliant idea of like, what about sitting back and kind of reflecting, right? So this episode may not be jam packed with like crazy, garden instruction, but what it will have is like inspiration and little learning little tidbits along the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we had like a really cool conversation the other night when we were talking about, being at 50 episodes. Cause I mean, that's, we're a little over a year from when the pandemic started. And that's when we first started, I guess, connecting and doing this. Cause I think it was like your third show that
Yep.
you had me on.
Yep.
And then the next week, I was like, lock down everything.
And no more
That
in
totally,
studio.
yeah. And that totally changed everything. And then we weren't able to meet up again until like maybe 2.5 months ago,
Yeah, I think is
something
when
like that.
we risked and recorded an episode in person at my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of crazy to, when I originally started the show, it was going to be, recording in studio and bringing guests to, the KKHT studio. And then it just turned into, needing to do all of this remotely. And, but it's been interesting. I feel like I've gotten to know people better that way because when you're not kind of in a radio studio and you're, pressed for time, when you're not as pressed for time, you're able to just have more chats with people. And I think it's less nerve-wracking for some guests, I think, to record over Zoom, because I think that there's something really intimidating about a radio studio unless are really experienced with it, right?
Right. Yeah. Because I'd been on a couple of shows before, so it wasn't that big of a deal for me when I came out,
Oh no,
but
you were a
it's been,
pro.
it's like I do this for a living.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of cool to do this the way that we've been able to do it because I'm recording here in my office at my nursery,
Yeah.
and being able to be a lot more flexible where we could schedule time and just go like, hey, let's, are you free at 3 or 4 or whatever? We're
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go do it.
Totally.
you know
Yeah.
and so that's given us a lot more flexibility. Plus I've also been able to like drive around the nursery, and then knowing that I was going to have a show with you, be like, oh, Jana, guess what I just found, and we should talk about this.
Yes. Exactly. It's like super inspiring with new ideas popping up all the time.
Right.
So we did
Is
kind of a cool thing was we posted on the Utah Gardeners Facebook page as well as the Gardening Utah Instagram, and we kind of brought up this topic and said, hey, we this podcast was born during a pandemic, and we've all learned a lot of interesting lessons in the last year during lockdown. And now that we're obviously it's seemingly coming out of all of that and getting back to real life, it's an interesting time, especially with being episode 50, to kind of reflect back on things that we've learned, both individually and the people that listen to this show. So we have some pretty cool kind of fun comments from people that are things that they learned. So anyway, we got a lot of amazing feedback, and that's the other thing I'm starting to notice more than ever, which by the way really keeps me going with this show, is that the feedback that we're getting more and more and more of is just so amazing to me. I mean, I get so humbled every time I get a message from somebody that says, oh, I learned this from your show, or wow, I just binge listened, or just getting this feedback from people just like makes me like, okay, I totally get why I'm doing this. I mean, not that I didn't before, but to actually get that feedback from people is so fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I had an experience the other day here at my nursery, and I was just out there driving around on a golf cart, looking at some plants to make a judgment call for a nursery down in Eagle Mountain, Mountain View Nursery. They asked me for some plants, and my shipping guys were like, "Hey, not all of these match up. I don't know that we could send them all, whatever." So I went out there to go take a look, and then a customer who had booked a golf cart online on our website at progressiveplants.com to just go drive around the nursery. He stopped and he's like, "Hey, I wanted to thank you for like all the videos and tips and all the time that dedicate to like the Facebook page and on YouTube and whatnot." And I was like, wow, that's actually kind of cool that like somebody would stop and like thank me for what I do. I mean, it's like you said, it's kind of humbling because I mean, I enjoy what I do and I like other people to enjoy what I do or but I know how frustrating it can be to try to learn all this stuff because there's so much to know and it's a rabbit hole that never ever ends.
Isn't that the
Ever.
truth? Isn't that the truth? I mean, I look back to the things that I know now that I didn't even before I started the show. I mean, I learned something from every single guest, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, when we had Lance on the last time
Oh,
that we recorded,
wow.
I mean, right? I mean, talking about making somebody feel underqualified to be here after talking to him. So, I mean, he was incredibly intelligent. There's he's been in the business for a very long time. And what did he say? He got his degree like 1975 or something like
Yeah.
that. So that was before I was born.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of good feedback on his episode, and especially one particular comment. Do you remember when he mentioned? And by the way, listeners, we're talking about episode 49. It was Cameron and I with Lance Walheim, who is the garden expert for Bio Advanced, and just has crazy credentials. If you haven't listened to that episode, definitely go back and have a listen because it was just so kind of informational and that kind of a thing. And he's just such a smart, yeah, person. So but when he mentioned that some gardens end up looking like a mishmash box of Crayolas, right? So many people, I got so many messages. I even got one today saying, "Oh my gosh, now I look at my own yard and I'm like, oh, it really does kind of look like a box of crayons." And then one lady's like, "I don't understand why that's bad," you know?
Well, I mean, everybody's a little bit different. I mean, I'd posted on the Facebook group that I'd sent an order up to Botanicals up in Kaysville, and she just she made the either it was a really good decision or a really bad decision. She just let me pick out everything, which usually
Yeah.
is a good decision. But I just had a whole bunch of like roses that were blooming and all this type of stuff. And so I took a photo of it and I put them on the trailers right before we loaded it on the truck. And I mean that thought of the mishmash of colors, but I came up with more of like, this actually looks like somebody murdered a clown back here.
Oh no. Oh
It's like with
geez.
all the face paint everywhere, the different
Uh,
colors.
yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Well, speaking of, while we're at it, that makes me wonder what is your personal favorite color combo? Because we were talking about Lance's whole point was just that you really want to incorporate the right colors in your design in the right areas. And so what's your faves?
Oh boy. It's not really so much that I have a favorite per se. It's whatever I feel is appropriate. And like for instance, at my girlfriend's house, this year we did more of a beach color type thing. We did like a lot of hot pinks, some yellows, some peach
Fun.
colors, like really like warm, type of colors in there. And we did like some like apricot drift roses, which are kind of like a pinkish color. It's some Julia Child roses, and
Oh,
and the other one that I really love is At Last, which is the one that smells so good from 500 miles away. So
yes.
that's the kind of like the theme that we did this year with like our annual plantings and whatnot. But it changes every single year. It just kind of depends. A lot of it for me is it depends on the personality of the person, that if I'm designing for them, for instance, or maybe what kind of mood that I'm in that particular year. I mean, I'll change things up. I have zero problem ripping out perennials and shrubs and doing something else.
Wow.
If I decide to change my mind on something, trees are a little bit harder because I want them to be there for a while because you can't get that back anytime soon.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends, but I like to use more uh, like mass plantings, things that just give you like a big, heavy visual impact. So, and we've talked about this before, where instead of like running or like planting like one or three of something, I'll usually do something like 30,
Yeah.
put them all together and then like layers and do different type of things with them. I like to really get like ornate with it. And the one of the things that I really like about a lot of the plants nowadays is that they have become so selective in their behavior with the different breeding that they've done, is that you can almost start using them as like extensions of houses, like like straight talk privet or purple pillar hibiscus. I mean, you can plant like 107 of them in a square if you wanted to and make an outdoor room.
Whoa.
So now I'm thinking like you can extend your house with plants. I mean, it's not going to be cheap, mind you.
Yeah.
Like it'll be kind of costly, but you can do this type of stuff. And the best part about it is that if you plant it correctly, there's really not that much maintenance in keeping it nice. And so like I keep thinking about like all of these creative type things that
Woo.
we can do instead of just thinking in terms of color. Now I'm thinking in terms of architecture,
Right.
structure, um, what's the word I'm looking for? More of like an art piece or something like that. Like, you can take like a laced up elderberry that grows kind of wonky anyway and turn it into a centerpiece in the yard. So there's just so many things that you can do now. And I guess when you work at a nursery all the time, I mean, and you look at things, you think about all these different combinations of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I do. I sleep and dream and eat plants.
That's amazing.
So
Okay, well, we are going to hit our first commercial break, but when we come back, Cameron and I are going to be reading some of the lessons that our listeners have learned during their first pandemic gardening season. And we're going to be bringing these up and giving our thoughts as well. Stick around right here on Gardening Utah. Stay with us. Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and Cameron Allcott and I are just kind of reminiscing. We were episode 50, if you can believe that. So we're kind of, taking a look back and things we've learned, and we asked our listeners some questions, and we have some really great pieces of feedback that I just think it'd be really inspiring to read, some lessons that other people learned and just kind of more inspirational today. So why don't we just jump right in, Cameron? What we asked the customer or the customers, what we asked the listeners was, you can tell I've been in retail like my whole life. But what we asked the listeners was, um, what did you learn during the pandemic in the gardening season? What was the biggest lesson the garden taught you last year? Because there were so many extra new and people just like super obsessed with gardening last year. So why don't you jump in with what Jody M said?
I can do that. So Jody M said, as I have been listening to your podcast, I am realizing how very little I know about gardening. I have all these aha moments all the time. What are the things that you wish you knew or understood better at the beginning of your gardening journey?
Oh my.
Jana.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, I mean, my gardening journey has been going on forever because I started like for fun when I was a teenager. I would even plant like radish seeds outside. I grew up in Park City, so it was not a very big growing season, but I remember thinking, oh, radishes only take 28 days. Great. I'm going to go put those in the ground and see what I can do. So I was just always kind of experimenting and I never really knew anything. It was just learning as I went. But if I had to think about this last year in particular, I mean, obviously being knee deep in a gardening show, I've just, and talking with such amazing guests over the last 50 episodes, I've learned so much. But if I think the number one thing that I'm really starting to get really geeked out on and learn and like completely shifting my mentality is soil. I think for me, I've always understood and appreciated the importance of amending soil. And, remember Martha Stewart episodes, always, digging a big hole, adding your compost and, really amending the soil. But I'm starting to really get into a lot of just kind of being like a soil snob. And I cannot wait. I want to find somebody to come on the show to talk about the no dig gardening method, because I'm just starting to relearn so many things. I learned a ton from John Webster from Biochar when he was on my show. He's just a complete soil scientist. And I've just that's the biggest thing I think that I've started to really change my mentality on is soil. And you taught me something in one of the episodes in particular where, I've always done sort of like, let's say, for example, if I'm working in a part of my garden where the soil isn't awesome and I'm going to plant a plant, I will dig the hole and I'll amend the soil. And you were the one that at one point said, look, what you're kind of doing there is you're creating like a bucket where the water's just not going to drain well. And, the way you described it, I was just like, oh my gosh, he's so right. And so it's completely changed the way I plant things, right?
Yeah,
Anyway.
plant for my philosophy has always been plant for what's appropriate. Because the reality of it is this: is that you, unless you go to like some sort of like Herculean efforts, you're not going to change the the local environment for the plant. I mean, you like say if you wanted to grow like blueberries or azaleas or rhododendrons, you can put all the peat moss in the hole that you want, but you're not going to keep the soil that way just because our natural processes here are not conducive to keeping soil acidic. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, it's a labor of love, or a nightmare of love.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I mean, like I said, but if you want to do it, then go ahead and do it. I mean, that's part of gardening. I mean, like our friend Liz, I mean, she goes through Herculean efforts to grow what she grows
Yep.
and keep things looking healthy. And that's what she wants to do. So that's great. I mean, go ahead and do it. But if you're the type of person who's like, yeah, I just want to like plant it and forget about it, yeah, you might not want to go through all those Herculean efforts to go and try to do something right off the bat.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. It's like one of the things that the aha moment that I had, it was when I was a lot younger, was most of the plants that we grow like here at my nursery. I mean, everybody thinks like, oh, I want to take care of my plants and I want to, do everything and I want to baby them or whatever. What I have learned is that plants are not as wimpy as we think they are.
Mm.
And most often when your plants die, it's because you killed it with kindness. And
Uh-huh.
most people don't understand that. So if you saw how we did our plantings here at the nursery and how we treated the plants, you'd be like, what are you doing and why are you murdering everything? Because we we don't handle them gently at all. Like we abuse them. The only thing that you have to really monitor is water, whether it's too much or too little. The other tip that I will give you for a lot of people who are like planting yards this year is when you are watering, don't try to saturate the earth. Deliver enough water for the size of the root mass that you are planting.
Yes.
Otherwise, you are going to create a wet, boggy mess. And when you do that, the roots are not going to try to expand out into that muddy mess that you have. So a lot of people end up overwatering a lot of their plants. And so usually with new plantings, my recommendation is to water with less volume, but more frequency. That way
Ah,
you can keep the root mass slightly moist, but not oversaturating the typically like very clay soils that we have.
right. I love
So
that.
yeah, it's watering is one of those things that you would think would be really easy, but in all honesty, it is the hardest thing to teach and master.
That's so
So
interesting. I love that. That was kind of like a tip of the week, Cameron.
sorry. Well,
No.
here's the thing. It's a very dangerous tip of the week.
Yeah.
Because like, watching plants, I mean, it is vigilance. It is knowing what underwatering and what overwatering looks like. And they
Absolutely.
look very similar. So, you have to be a little careful. You have to be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
So I deal with that with like a lot of landscapers where they install yards and then they just like keep water on everything all the time. And then they lose half the plants because it's just been kind of like a slow decline. So, I'll walk onto a job site and be like, why are you killing my stuff with
Yeah.
kindness? So,
Uh-huh.
and people have a tendency to even continue to overwater in the summer months when it's 100 degrees outside because they think they need to add more water.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes that's not always true. So it's a fine line and it's a fine balance, and it's actually harder than you would think.
And that was the tip of the week. Just kidding. I love that. Speaking of tip of the week, one of the comments on our post was from Miranda, and she said, "Your tip of the week has helped me so much as a new gardener. Keep telling me what to do and when, please." So I love that feedback from Miranda, and we will certainly do that. And we'll be right back with more right here on Gardening Utah. Stay with us. Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and with me here is Cameron Allcott with Progressive Plants, and we are recording episode 50 and just having a fun time doing it. Okay, Cameron, let's jump back into this listener feedback.
Okay. Nancy said, I needed a part-time job last year in May. I ended up getting a job at Mill Creek Gardens, which was considered an essential business during the pandemic and started the day after Mother's Day. Wow, you dodged a bullet. I had no gardening experience and was assigned to the veggie and herbs section. I jumped in with both feet and learned everything I could from my coworkers, the internet, and customers. That is one of the busiest times for gardeners to be buying plants for their gardens. This is my second year there, and I've learned so much. I love doing my own gardening, working outside with plants, and helping customers. I have learned so much from listening to the Gardening Utah podcast on my way to work. My job and gardening at my house makes me so happy. That's
That
awesome.
that is so freaking cool.
You know what? Working in like retail nurseries is awesome because you learn so many different things. Because I mean, they're staffed they're staffed very differently than the way that my nursery is staffed. You know, you've got a lot of people there who know a lot of different things, and you get to interact with a lot of experienced gardeners that are not only customers, but just the people that have lead the different departments and stuff. I mean, I know some of like amazingly smart people like at Glover, Mill Creek, Valley Nursery up in Ogden. There's a couple people up there who are just like, they blow my mind. Cooks down in Orem and Thrive. I mean, there's so many smart people down there that it's wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely. And I just geeked out at her comment because Lorene Boutner, who's the owner of Mill Creek Gardens, was the first guest of
That's
my
right.
show.
She was on your first episode.
My very first episode, and it was quite phenomenal. I mean, it was so fun to have a chat with her. And then I believe she was in another episode. I think it was like, I forget the number, but it was somewhere about this time last year. So yeah, she's really fun to have on. And it just kind of was like, wow, if somebody that works at a nursery listens to my show too, that's amazing.
What's funny was that my grandmother and my aunt both knew Lorene, and yeah, like they like hung out. I think my aunt actually like volunteered and did some stuff for her at her nursery and whatnot. And Lorene had no idea. She didn't make the connection between the last name of my grandmother and my last name. She had no clue.
Oh, right.
So like right after my grandmother died, she's like, and she actually came to my grandmother's viewing,
Oh,
so
wow.
she's like, I had no idea that was your grandmother.
Wow. That's something I've never heard before. You've
Yeah,
never
it's
told me
funny.
that story. That's crazy.
I forgot about it until just now.
That's like a real full circle moment. That's pretty crazy. Small Lake City, right?
Yep. Back
Okay,
again.
we have a message here from Reagan. And she actually, did you know that I have a connection with Reagan too?
Reagan.
Charmin. She is my we have the same, well, my sister-in-law is her sister-in-law. Anyway.
Wait, doesn't Liz Hamilton have a connection to her as well?
Yeah, they work together at Wheeler Farm.
Okay, that's
I
how.
believe.
Okay.
I believe that's how. Yeah. Anyway, so Reagan said, with the drought conditions continuing to worsen, how can we help our established and newly planted babies to not die a crispy death? We kind of addressed that a little bit, right?
That's actually a really good question because I know a lot of people are paranoid about water.
Yeah.
Myself included, because I have a nursery that runs on water.
Right.
So these are things that I have to think about too.
Yeah.
And if your irrigation is set up correctly, like if you are using drip irrigation and you have very targeted, like emitters to your plants and whatnot, you're really not using that much water. Like you'd be surprised how much water you are not using. So typically when it comes to like your trees, shrubs, even your perennials, even with the new planting, you're not using as much water as you think that you are. your biggest consumers of water is lawn.
Uh-huh.
Like 10 to like 15 times like what you'd be putting in your garden beds. You
Yep.
know, if you're doing annuals in your garden beds, that sometimes is a little bit of a different situation. So, but if you're doing like container gardening or something like that, you're really not using as much water as you think that you are. I mean, you're probably using more water for your washer and dryer. Well, maybe your washer and your dishwasher than you would be using for your lawn, or not your lawn, but for your garden beds.
Right.
So I wouldn't be that concerned. If you're doing overspray, then I would be like, this is the year that you go and convert. Just spend the money,
Absolutely.
just go do it.
Yes, convert to drip, people. There's your tip of the week or this segment.
Yeah, this is your
Myself
tip of the
included.
summer.
That's right. And myself included, by the way. My last house had drip and my new one does not. And it's one of my biggest regrets. And we will be changing it. So there's that. Okay. Jump into this comment from Malie.
Okay. Um, I learned to do things the hard way with the right motivation. Or no, wait, no, I just learned that we can do hard things with the right motivation. 26 cubic yards of amendments moved by herself and
Whoa.
lots of drip irrigation installed, all to be able to purchase the plants all to be able to plant the plants that she purchased to keep them alive. Malie, that's 26 cubic yards is a lot of stuff, especially for you to move, because like I know how little you are. So,
Right?
but it's awesome. I mean, Malie is one of the brightest people that I think that I've ever met in my life. I mean, she knows so much and how to do things, and a really good garden coach. I'm really glad that she, agreed to be like one of the part of our design team at Progressive Plants, because I've learned a lot from her, and she's great. So,
Absolutely.
but
And listeners, Malie
that's
was in a previous episode, just a few episodes back, on planting a food forest, and it was
oh,
really
that's right,
cool.
she was. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
really smart, especially with like edibles and whatnot. I mean, her that's her thing. I know that's her passion. I've never really been into growing food because that's kind of like the last thing I want to do when I get home.
That's not unusual. You never want to keep
It
doing what you get paid to do, right?
it's a lot, like food production's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than ornamentals, I can tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so here's a comment from Rebecca Connors. I learned that my eyes are bigger than my wallet when it comes to plants I want.
This is true because I know how much she spent.
Yes. Let's see. What's the next one here?
I think that's the other one of Rebecca. I think that's the other thing that she said.
Oh, right.
That I learned that I need to turn on the sprinklers before things start to die, which can sometimes be quite quick here in Utah, because I believe she's from Georgia, I think, is where
Right.
I think where she's from.
Uh-huh.
But still play the dare game every year, as I'm scared to turn them on in the front yard, as Utah has this weird water switch deep in the ground, and I once caused a big water leak when I didn't shut it off correctly. You know
Oh.
what? Oh, she's talking about her stop and waste.
Ah.
Um, that's actually something that you do have to be very careful of. If you do not completely turn the stop and waste properly, it continues to leak underground. This happened to my girlfriend a couple of years ago, where I actually thought that she might have like broken the stop and waste and it was like leaking, but we had like this big like bubble in the lawn full of water, like it had welled up.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it wasn't shut off correctly, and we were like, okay, that's kind of weird, but yeah, we fixed it. We figured it out.
Yeah. Oh,
And then we
boy.
popped the bubble and it was kind of fun. And then we could use it like a trampoline and it would spit water out every time we jumped on it. It was kind of neat.
Oh, my
5-year-old me loved it.
God. Holy cow. Oh, my word. Okay. Well, let's see. I'll read one here from Ashton. We just bought our home in 2019 and never had a place that I wanted to invest time and money into gardening besides pots. 2020 was our first gardening season and we went full force being at home. We made a tall fence to protect our plants and chickens that functions as a trellis. We also took over our grandma's garden. Spending time in the garden brought us so much joy. August of 2020, my girlfriend's sister passed away in a pedestrian auto accident. My goodness, that's horrible. She was living with us at the time. Everything seemed daunting and a task, especially as we are beginning to harvest. Our crops got neglected a little, and that's okay. We still had a huge harvest. We canned a lot of things and stored others. This year, we're expanding our garden, taking up another 25 by 60-foot space. Gardening has been very peaceful and grounding. Being in the garden helps us appreciate the little things and life all around us. Grateful for your podcast, puns, and sage advice. Oh, my word. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
I know that was like heavy, but also lovely at the same time. With,
Yeah.
yeah, my word.
Well, and I think we've talked about this. I don't know how much we've talked about it on the air. But gardening for me and just working with plants in general, I mean, it's one of those things where I just think it helps make us better people. I made a Facebook post about this the other day, I think, because something just made me kind of think about it. But being able to take care of something and succeeding and failing and being okay with failing, knowing that there's always going to be some sort of curveball that gets thrown at you.
Right.
It teaches you patience.
Yep.
It teaches you humility, because no matter how much like you will have issues. When we were over at Liz's house a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
as far as we know, like she's like the end all be all as far as horticulture goes. And she was like, yeah, my blueberries, one of them died straight up, and this, that, and the other. And this is a person who's like, she knows exactly what to do.
Yep.
She knows how to protect everything. And sometimes like nature just doesn't cooperate, and you just kind of roll with the punches and you move on and you just keep going. I mean,
Yep.
it's just like life. If you can sit there and be frustrated with it, or you can just accept it and move on and just do the next thing and do it better than you did before. Just teaches you
Absolutely.
preparation.
Ah,
Like what are you going to do? Stop eating blueberries? No,
right.
you're going to find a way to do more blueberries. And
Right.
you know now that you've been through something negative, you'll figure out how to either deal with it or prevent it in the future.
Absolutely. Wow, Cameron, that was deep. That was lovely. And now, deep thoughts from Cameron Allcott. You've seen
Well,
that Saturday
it's
Night
like,
Live.
yeah. Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
That's
The
right.
crows were calling his name, thought Caw. But no, like when I was running the growing operation here at the nursery, like it would freak me out because I would lose entire blocks of things, and for one reason, because I, wasn't there to see the pipe that failed, or things had leaked out and then it froze really hard, or some things that weren't even my fault. Like, sometimes things got too dry in the freezer from the bare root company that kept all the bare root in the freezer. They didn't do their job, but I'm the one that had to deal with it. It's just nature throws you curveballs. And then after a little while, you're just like, well, you just kind of expect it. Now I'm just like, well, every year I'm just like, what else are we going to get? Because this is fun at this
Right.
point.
Yeah. I remember last year when all those trees got uprooted by that windstorm. I mean, there's just something different every year that just kind of.
Yeah. But you know what? It was, in a way, it was kind of, there was a silver lining, at least for me, because I mean, I knew I was going to sell a lot of trees. Um, you know,
Right.
but here's the other thing too, is that it gave me the opportunity to introduce some municipalities, like Holiday City, for instance. I mean, they bought like a bunch of trees for me, and I think Bill Creek Gardens as well. I think we both kind of split that load for their tree giveaway that they had.
Oh,
And I got to have a conversation with a Holiday City official and just be like, hey, we should be doing these. We should be doing these elms. We should be doing these alcovas. We should be doing all of these things, because these other trees are kind of trashy that are historically have been there. And now, because there's been so much monoculture, now you're having problems.
yeah.
So let's diversify a little bit and try different things. And guess what? They have way more diverse trees that they were able to give away that people are going to be planting, which is just going to help everything in that area for years to come. I mean, this is a 20 to 30 year solution for a lot of problems that we're having now. So that's, to me, that's just it's kind of a cool thing that we were able to raise awareness, I guess, a little bit, that there's other things that are out there than just sycamores and Canada red choke cherries. I mean, those trees, like Eddie horticulturalist is like, why are we still using these trees? They're garbage. But and now I've hopefully just maybe unintentionally just kibosh sales on those, but oh well.
Yeah.
Stop buying flowering pears.
Thank you. And no more cottonwood trees, please.
Yeah, no more cottonwood trees, no more poplars. Just
Oh,
no more
can't.
aspens in residential neighborhoods in the valleys.
Absolutely not. Even though they're pretty, they
Thanks.
belong in the mountains.
Yep. Go take a trip into the mountains. If you want to see aspen, go for a hike.
Yes, and just because they sell them at the Lowe's in Taylorsville does not mean you need to buy them and plant them in Taylorsville. You will
No,
regret
please
it.
don't.
I know. We should tell them how we really feel, Cameron.
I know, right?
Okay, let's see. Want to jump into another comment?
Yeah. Will S said, during the pandemic, I moved to Utah from Belair, California, but I was raised in West Philadelphia. My aunt in Belair taught me to garden. In Philadelphia, I spent most of my days on the playground, but loved to garden because it made me feel like I was chilling out and relaxing. Is this Will Smith? I also love shooting some basketball outside the school. And then some guys started making trouble in my neighborhood. My mom got scared and made me move to my aunt and uncle's house in Bel Air. Do you have a friend named Carlton?
I'm so sorry I had to do it. It's called.
That's amazing. I don't know why I didn't read this comment beforehand, so you totally got me on that one.
No, because I didn't put it in the chat so you wouldn't read it and figure it out. I'm so sorry.
Today on Guarded Utah Comedy Hour.
Jana Belair's Cameron. Oh my gosh. Okay. 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 That was not fair.
I'm totally going to rickroll you later.
I know, exactly. Okay, if you're confused, here's what getting Belaired means. When a person begins to speak about a subject and then works in the lyrics to the theme song of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So that's what just happened there. There wasn't really a Will Smith that posted that at all. I just said,
that's amazing.
Okay. I'm sorry. You took that very well. I appreciate your sense of humor.
Oh, now that I know that it's this type of show, guess what we're doing from here on out?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's the thing with me. And now we're on the podcast only ending, so this won't be on the radio side of the show. Okay, so I do this all the time.
What? This needs to be on the radio side of the show. You need to cut this in.
Okay, I will. I'll try to cut it into the radio. Oh my gosh. So I literally try to Bel-Air people all the time. All the time. And I mean, I've even Bel-Aired people on other radio stations where, like, for example, they'll do like a call-in section and it'll say, okay, where do you think, there was a recent one last year, it was like, where do you think Donald Trump grew up? And what do you think his favorite hobby was? And I'm like, well, obviously West Philadelphia and playing basketball on the playground. So I text in that answer and they read it on the air. And of course, I just could not believe, I was just laughing so hard. So I just do this all the time. I try to Bel-Air people when they least expect it. And my sister's thing is Rick rolling. She's always Rick rolling. So anyway, there you have it. Thanks for the laugh. I figured for episode 50, it's a garden show. Let's not take ourselves too seriously, right? But I'll tell you what,
man,
Googling
awesome.
the lyrics of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and then trying to change it to where it's like garden related.
See, I just wish I would have watched it more.
Right?
Like, yeah, because I mean, if I would have watched Bel-Air, I didn't watch it when I was a kid. So I know Will Smith, I know DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
I don't know. You picked up on the lyrics pretty darn fast because you stopped halfway through and you're like, wait, is this Will Smith?
Like, wait a minute.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, during the pandemic, I moved to Utah from Belair, California. See, that was too tricky. My aunt in Belair, but I was raised in West Philadelphia. My aunt in Belair taught me to garden. See, that I'm just playing games
See,
here.
well, now I'm gonna like, try to figure out how to work in like Eminem lyrics or something like that.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that
Mom's
was a
spaghetti.
there you go.
The
Slim
real Slim
Shady.
Shady.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, the last comment I have here that's a real one that's on the Gardening Utah Instagram was from Lacey at Homestead Garden Farm. And she said, beautiful. And I love the episodes with both you and Cameron. So thanks, Lacey. And hopefully you're listening to this and cracking up. Oh my gosh, for real. I'm sorry.
No, I think we should do more stuff like this more often. I mean, I think that makes it fun.
Totally. I think so too. I think so too. Oh, actually, here's one
Oh, we
last
need
question.
to no. Here's what we need to do. We need to start getting guests and then start doing stuff like this. So now I'm thinking about stuff. So I was gonna like go home at night, and instead of thinking of like like dreaming and sleeping and eating plants, I'm going to be like thinking of like tricks that we can play on people. So what we're going to do from here on out.
Garden pranks with Cameron and Jana. Oh,
Oh boy, yeah. Oh, there's a whole lot. Just most of them are not like appropriate for this type of forum, though.
right, right. Okay, here's one last comment on the Instagram portion from Practically Spontaneous. I like your handle. Do you know of any aggressive Utah native plants that can stand up to weeds like morning glory? I would like to fight the morning glory with plants if possible. Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah, no.
I know, because there's
There,
just not. If there
I
is,
mean, you have to look at the survival mechanism of morning glory. I mean, it roots down like tens of feet,
yeah.
spreads everywhere. It's a vine, so it climbs things, and so it doesn't matter what you plant around it. It's it wants to wrap around stems of things. There's nothing like that's so dense that's going to choke anything out. Um, no, like really the only way is constantly either battling it by hand or some sort of chemical control. I can't think of any other way to do it. I have a coworker here who uh, uses I don't know if she uses mites, but she found mites because there is a mite that will go after bindweed and eat it and kill it, kind of.
What?
Yeah. So well,
Wow.
it's basically a spider mite type of thing. It's very host specific, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is that most of your garden pests are host specific. So like the aphids that go after your roses are not the same aphids on your cabbage. They don't spread that way, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay. So there's like thousands upon thousands of aphids, of different species of aphids. So I've seen, aphids on roses. I've seen aphids on butterfly weed. I've seen aphids on hibiscus. There's aphids on cherries, but they're all different species of aphids. But a lot of your predatory type insects are not discriminatory. They will, like there's a like parasitic wasps that will go after any aphid. It doesn't care.
Right.
But so everything has like a particular host for something, and so this bindweed has a host for a particular mite that mite only eats bindweed. So
Interesting.
yeah, and it definitely affects how vigorous the morning glory will grow. And so this is where you can kind of get into the debate of like how much of pesticides should you use, because pesticides are not discriminatory typically.
Yep.
They just kill anything
I've,
that doesn't have a spine.
yeah.
So so I mean it's kind of fun to watch nature in action. I mean, like here at the nursery, I mean, I really try hard, and my grower does it at this point, but when I was doing it, like we don't treat a ton if we don't have to. Like, when it comes to like aphids and roses, especially if they're outside, like when they're in a cold frame or something like that, it's a little bit different story. But when they're outside, when we're growing them, we'll see aphids on things, but unless things are really getting out of control, we typically don't treat because 2 weeks later, guess what starts rolling up? ladybugs, lacewings, all that type of stuff. I mean, they just have like a buffet, plus the temperatures kind of heat up a little bit, which isn't very conducive for aphid survival. So it changed, like the whole environment just kind of changes. And, a lot of times I think as gardeners, sometimes we overreact thinking like, oh crap, something's on my roses. It's going to overwhelm the roses and kill them.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's not, it doesn't really work that way usually. When it comes to your food, that's a different story. I mean, leaf miners can totally destroy like beets and spinach and all that type of stuff. Squash bugs will, decimate, anything in the squash family, So, I mean, there are some things that you kind of have to, treat chemically or whatever, or just be hyper vigilant about. But that's where I guess it comes to like knowledge and experience of, practicing. And it's okay to fail. Like it's okay to lose a crop to squash bugs once.
Right.
Keep a log, find out like when it happened, when you need to look, do your research, so then when to go look for squash bug eggs or squash bugs period, or maybe rethink the whole like overwintering all of your winter kill like in the same area, like all the dead leaves or whatnot, because that's a harbor for squash bugs, but it's also a harbor for beneficials. And so I mean, it's just
Yeah.
you have to play the game, you have to learn.
Yeah.
You have to like, what are you willing to live with or not live with when it comes to this type of stuff? So, everyone's different. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah. The best example that I've seen visually to what you're talking about, and just as far as like, nature is this harmony, right? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
balance. And if there's, everything has its place in the ecosystem in some way, shape, and form. And when there's an excess of something, there's something else that doesn't necessarily need to be chemical that can help it. Not doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily is what I mean. So, and the best example of this that I've ever seen is a show called The Biggest Little Farm. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, Cameron, you would freaking love it. Okay, so essentially
I
it's
don't
called
I don't really have time at this time of year to watch stuff.
I know, I know. I saw it on a plane, but it was incredible. The Biggest Little Farm, and just Google it to figure out how you can watch it, listeners. There used to be a paywall behind it, so you did need to pay. I believe, it's like $1.99 or something like that. Perhaps I watched it again. I wanted my husband to watch it. I think it's on Amazon Prime or something like that, Prime Video. But anyway, I cannot recommend it enough. It is about all of everything Cameron just said and how they've just created, this farm that has this incredible ecological balance, and it was kind of a documentary on 10 years of their lives and how they created it. So anyway, there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the combinations of everything is like endless. I mean, I've tried so many different methods and things. I've done, I've experimented with different things in permaculture, had some successes with some things, like dismal failures with others. I mean, it all depends, Then again, the weather's going to change. Sometimes you have cooler, wetter years. Sometimes you have drier years and dusty years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, I've been doing this since I was 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And guess what? I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm it is what it is.
Yep.
It's fun. Once you master everything, then what's the point? This is like one of those things that you will never, ever master ever.
Never.
And that's, to me, that's the challenge, is like always getting better and trying to strive for perfection, knowing that I will never get it. I think it's the same reason why people like to play Tetris, because you will never beat it.
That's right. I'm obsessed with Tetris, by the way.
Right?
Love it. It's so great.
But I mean, that's one of those things that you'll just never master. You'll never beat it.
Nope, never. Okay, here's our last comment, and I saved the best for last because the best is the actual winner. So what the winner is getting, we picked a winner. The people that posted a question in the Utah Gardeners Facebook group for our 50th episode, we were going to be giving away a bottle
A chicken dinner. Winner, chicken dinner.
There you go. A bottle of all-in-one rose and flower care 3 3-in-1 Systemic from Bio Advanced, who was on the show last week. So that is going to be going to Tia Henderson Chapman, and how perfect, because her comment was, I've learned that I have a newfound love for roses. So Tia, we're going to hook you up with this. So watch out for a message from us. So we did it, Cameron. I'm still laughing. I can't
Thanks,
believe.
Carlton.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh my gosh. That was really fun.
Now you have to dance. Like we have to do the.
Yeah, we need to do
the Carlton.
A celebratory dance. Oh man, I can't believe that I made it through, because I was literally almost cracking up anticipating this moment. So I pulled it off. I'm kind of proud of myself, I'm not gonna lie. But
I saw the smirk. And I'm like,
what's she smirking about? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Cameron, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing everything you do for the show and for the community at large in Utah.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jana. It's so much fun to be here.
Boom. All right.